As the national capital gears up for the G20, we have with us at the moment Mr. Jose Maria Ridao, who is the ambassador of Spain to India. Let's talk about him from the expectations that Spain has as far as this G20 summit is concerned. Mr. Ridao, thank you so much for speaking to Times Now. Let me begin by asking you, we are at the cusp of the beginning of this particular G20 summit. What are your expectations?
More or less the same as in any meeting in the past. We would like to contribute to the stability in the world, and the only thing which is different now is that perhaps we are facing a very special moment in international relations because of the war in Ukraine and the results and the bad aspects of this war, not only in human dimension in Ukraine and Russia, but also in the rest of the world. So we would like to contribute and to have a result in which stability will return to our world.
Right. And how do you think a summit like this can actually contribute in that regard, in terms of, now is not an era of war. This is what we have seen in Bali. How do we see this evolving now in the New Delhi summit, in your view?
Yes, as you know, there are some head of delegation who are not coming at the highest level. So it's an important signal that we have to work in the sense that this summit permits us to show, particularly Russia, that the way in which he's behaving in the international community and particularly in Ukraine is not good for the G20, for the world, for the rest of the countries we are involved in the consequences of the war.
So in terms of this particular summit as well, let me begin by asking you about, the diplomatic ties between India and Spain. 65 years that the two countries have had ties. How do you see the relationship with the two countries strengthening, particularly in the context of this particular summit?
Yeah, the most important thing is that understand that for us, for Spain and the Spanish government, India is not only a market. Because when you see that India is increasing in terms of presence and trade and influence in the world, the temptation for all of the rest of the world is to treat India as a big market, a huge market. For us, India is a real country with all the consequences in terms of culture, in terms of humanity, in terms of trade, of course, but other aspects. So the approach we want to India and the kind of relations we want with India is this holistic approach. So we pay a lot of attention to cultural relations, of course of trade, we can develop this idea also. But one particular issue also, and I would like to underline this, which is visas. It's very strange to be here, as I have been here for 2 years, and discover how important for Indians is to have the possibility to travel abroad. And you don't understand the importance of this very tiny thing in other countries if you are not in India. So the most important thing to understand the problem we have is that in India, the rules established for giving this permission to Indians to go abroad is established according to the medium income. So for the time being, India is in transition and the medium income is not so high. So you have this on one hand. On the other hand, you have around 200 million people ready to travel around the world without any problem. So it's very difficult for the rest of the countries handle this situation. So it means two things. The first is please be aware of this as Indian citizens, that we are doing our best. We would like to, and in particular Spain, to be perceived as a visa-friendly country. And on the other hand, we try to improve in order to have more relations with India. And more relations with India means also to have the possibility to travel to our country. That's why this particular issue, which is in other countries, must be strange to speak at this level of this thing, is important in India.
But do you see some possible resolution of this issue? Is this something that you are actively working with the government to resolve?
We are working on this. In fact, one of the priorities we would like to establish in India as presidency of the European Union in our internal relations with the European Union is to pay attention to this particular aspect. So we have to start a reflection because the case of India is not the same as other cases. I insist, you have this medium income according to which the rules are established, but at the same time, because you are in a country in a very fast and very important transition, you have many people that not only want to travel, they need to travel, and we need them coming to our countries. So that's why we have to start this kind of reflection.
Right. It's very interesting that you mentioned that some countries look at India as a huge market and talk about trade. And it is a fact. We've seen, for instance, France, Germany, other European countries who very actively sort of pursued their interest here in India. But if you were to talk about, apart from the cultural ties that you spoke about, what are the areas in which you see more cooperation between India and Spain, for instance, in upcoming years?
Yes. First of all, we have to strengthen our our changes in terms of political visits. So we are working on this because it's important to understand that India, for the good and for the bad in this sense, is very far from Spain. For the good, it means that we don't have any issue with India and with the neighboring countries. So we are a country that you can come to us and we can go to you without any second thought, anything. So it's very fun. For the bad, if I can speak in this way, is that we have to build our relation, and we have to start with the most immediate things. So culture is very important, and our engagement in this field is very important. We had here in India the first exhibition ever about Joan Miró, for instance, or we have groups, musical groups coming that immediately after receive the Latin Grammy Awards, or we have a group coming from the Royal Opera House in Spain, which this year, when this group came, was declared the best opera house in the world. So, I mean, culture is one aspect, but the rest we have to build it properly, and apart from culture, apart from visas, apart from other things, we have to build this relation among political visit. So I hope very soon we will have political dialogue in Madrid with the Indian government, and we will continue to strengthen this kind of relations.
Right. So defense is one area where you have spoken about, you hope to see more cooperation. What are the specific areas, what are the specific projects that you are hoping to work with the Indian government and the Indian forces on?
In
defense,
in
defense cooperation.
So we have a very important contract to build 56 planes. The first 16 in Spain, but the rest here in India. On the 13th September, we will give to the Indian authorities the first plane of this contract by Airbus Spain. And now we are working on another program, which is the P-75 submarines, 6 submarines for India. We are very engaged with this program because we have perhaps the best technology in the world now for the propulsors. This is the first thing. The second thing is that we are ready to transfer technology, because for us it's a way of having better relations with a friend and an ally. And one important thing also is that in Spain, the main parties agree that we have to strengthen our relations with India, and particularly in this field, and they support this program of the P-75. So those are the main programs we have in implementation now, and in the resolution by the Indian government. But we are very hopeful that Spain will be taken into account to this program of submarines.
Right. So any specific contributions that you're hoping to bring in the course of this G20 summit, because you will of course be one of the most important countries amongst, of course, practically like a member country in terms of how the summit functions. What is it that you would be contributing as far as this particular summit is concerned? Any particular areas, any particular issues?
Yeah, I think our Prime Minister will participate in some concrete meetings. I think that environment is very important. It's very important because it's a way to change our way of producing things, sometimes in Spain, but I think in other countries in the world, we think about the system of production and the model of production. And it's very theoretical, it was very theoretical, till we have this need, absolutely unclear need, of changing the way in which we produce goods and services in order not to pollute more and those things. So this particular area is very, very important for us. But I insist, for the context in which this G20 is taking place, we will be very happy if we are ready, all of us, including Spain, to give some hope to the world, to give some stability to a moment which is very complicated for the world because of this war in Ukraine. Because the war in Ukraine, and this is very important to underline the idea, is not an European war. It's a war in Europe, which is very different. Sometimes you can ask why it's possible that other wars in other parts of the world are not considered by the international community or the main powers in the community as important as this one. It's not because we are Eurocentric. No, it's not the idea. The idea is that the influence of this war, for many reasons, is global. So in the sense it's global, we are obliged in this meeting of the G20 to give some hope, not only for Ukrainians, but also for Africans who are suffering from this war and the consequences of this war in other parts of the world.
Apart from environment, climate change in Europe, any other particular issues, concerns that you propose to raise during the course of the G20 summit?
Yes, the agenda is very, very large, and we have our own interests, of course, but we think that our constructive role here is to support the Indian presidency in all the priorities they have, because we share these priorities, and is not to try to push one or other because it's in our interest. We think in terms of the interest of the G20, and in this moment, since India is the presidency, we have to support them in all the priorities.
Right. Also, Spain currently has the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Now, the big question that many have in terms of the free trade agreement between India and US concerned, could this potentially this tenure lead to an acceleration of these negotiations of the FTA in your view? We
have done our best to go ahead with this free trade agreement between India and the European Union. The negotiations started very far away. The Portuguese presidency bring back to the agenda this agreement. In our case, we are trying to go ahead very clearly, because there is one special context, which is if we don't reach an agreement by the end of this year, India and also the European institutions will have elections. So it's important to go ahead with this. I think it's not impossible to have this agreement, and we have to do our best to go ahead. And at the same time, I think it's good for India and it's good for Europe. So it's important for India to become a full member of the chains of value in the world, and Europe, and particularly Spain, is ready to have India in this chain of value, incorporated to these chains of value. And that means exporting things, of course, but also importing things, because it's the best way to develop our economies.
Which are the specific areas in terms of trade that you referred to? Which are the specific areas where you see potential of trade growth? We of course have referred to defense cooperation, but what are the other areas that you can see potential?
I think India is in a so fast transition that perhaps it's a very singular case, because any area is good for trade and cooperation. If you think in terms of infrastructure, India has a lot of things to do in infrastructure. You think in terms of processed food, you have a lot of things to do. If you think in terms of I don't know, technology, you have a lot of things to do, aerospatial, everywhere. So it's important to see that India is in transition. All the aspects of a developed country are present here, and so we have possibilities of having this trade with India. But once again, I insist, even if India has this huge potential in any area, and we are ready in Spain, of course, with some specialities because we are not specialists in every area, but even if it's this huge potential, there is this huge potential, India is not only a market. This is important, and this is our approach to India, and this is our desire to build a holistic relation with this country.
Right. India has also recently put forth the idea of granting full membership of the African Union to the G20. How would you view this? Because we've seen Prime Minister Modi reach out to all G20 leaders suggesting the inclusion of the African Union. Do you believe that African Union as part of the G20 would be beneficial, and how they could contribute? In your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's a very initial step of this initiative. Spain is in favor of multilateralism. So it's difficult for us to have a close club in any country. But in this case, of course, we are very happy to see that Prime Minister Modi is talking about the African countries. But don't forget also that Spain is the 15th economy. And once we broke the principle that the G20 is not 20 biggest economies, we have to also to consider Spain, because we are very happy with this position of being a permanent guest, but we deserve to be a member and to have a cooperative role. So we are open to discuss any initiative, and particularly this initiative of open the club, if we can speak in these terms, is interesting for us, because it's something which is very close to us also.
Right. Okay. So have you raised this issue up with other member countries, other friendly countries, India, for instance? Have you raised this issue?
It's a very particular issue, because we don't want to impose anyone our idea. So the thing is that you have to, in some sense, to discover this. So we have been present from the very beginning. We have a very positive role. So we don't want to impose our presence there, because at the end, the most important thing is the results of the G20. Being a permanent member or being a full member is a question of name. Our will is to contribute. And of course, we hope that in one moment, especially if Prime Minister Modi is talking about open the club, the countries belonging to the G20 will realize that there is one country, a permanent guest, that also is there and is ready to contribute.
All right. Let me now address a few concerns that India has had. We've had, of course, a long-standing border issue with China. But recently we saw how China, through certain maps that it has released, and it's not just India, but several other Asian countries who objected, for instance, countries close to the South China Sea, who objected to this particular map, because certain parts of this map have even shown Indian territories where India is very much in charge of things there, as part of the Chinese territory. How do you see this kind of cartographic war or cartographic aggression, whatever you choose to call it, on part of China?
I've been told the other day to some friends that I remember when I was in the university that my teacher told me, studying cartography and geography, he told me sometimes cartography is a tool to war. And our work as scholars, our work in this case as diplomats, is to prevent cartography to be a tool for war. So we understand, me personally, I understand very clearly the meaning of this kind of approach. And the only thing I would like to say is that having a solution for this part of the world, and particularly this situation between China and India, is good for this region, but it's good also for the rest of the world.
Right. And so your teacher was right when you told you that. Now you feel.
Yes, I suppose in scholar terms is right. Yeah.
Right.
So but the most important lesson also is that we have to work in order to prevent this cartography to become this malediction.
Speaking of cultural ties, one important aspect is, of course, that football is growing very popular in India. Yeah. Can we hope to see Spanish clubs sometime, perhaps, or Spanish stars sometime visiting India?
Yeah, all the questions for an ambassador are difficult, but for me this is the most difficult one because one thing. So I am not very fond of football, and I have to answer you. I realized that football is a very increasing passion in India, particularly in West Bengal or in Kerala and other places, also in Delhi. And my duty, and I insist because I am not very fond of football, my duty is to promote this. And we are doing our best. And I hope, of course, that sometimes one big team of Spain could come here. And let me say something about this question, because Spain won the Women Championship. And sometimes I've been told, congratulations for winning this cup. And I have to say that we have two victories in this occasion. One was in football. I mean, the women team won. But the second victory is against machismo, because of the result of this misbehavior of the president of the federation. I was surprised, and in this case I was proud of my country, to see demonstrations in the street, women and men together saying, it's not like this, enough is enough. We have to respect women, we have to respect their right, we have to respect equality. So in this case of football, not being a fan of football, I'm very proud, not only because the women won the cup, but because of the cup and the situation after the cup. Spain realized that we are defending equality among women and men. And the engagement of my country makes me very proud in this thing. More even than football. To have a good team is very good, but to have a good society is better.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for taking the time out and speaking to us.
No, thank you to you for your interest.
Thank you so much.